Welcome back to another edition of the Saturday to Sunday Football Podcast. I am Paul Perticchese, and joining me across the way is Mr. Jeff Abercrombie. Jeff, week 0 and week 1 of the college football season is just about in the books. We have Clemson tonight playing, but most of week 0 and week 1 have concluded. There's a lot to talk about. How are you doing this evening?
Football's back. I mean, we got our last few fantasy drafts running up. We had football this last weekend. It's the matchups usually aren't, anything too crazy this early in the year, but we had a couple really big ones. And they're going to be highlighted by some great performances that we get to talk about too. So this is it. This is football season. We are back.
Yeah, and for people who've been longtime listeners, the in-season shows is really, we've done it as stock reports, which is kind of what it's going to be in theory, in terms of NFL, draft eligible, the Devy, NFL rookies, dynasty. But we're going to do it a little bit different this year. And we decided that we're going to have segments where we basically give our S2S teams of the week for week 1. We're going to have a first team or a first string, a second team. We want to call it second team, second string. Some weeks, even like this week, because there's not much to talk about in the NFL just yet. We even have a third team of the week. So we're going to go through. Let you know, it's not just going to be straight statistical production, because that's easy. If you just want to find the best stats of the week, sometimes it's going to be based on who the opponent was. Sometimes it's going to be on something that maybe we didn't see on our film during the summer, or what other significance does it have. And some weeks we're just not going to talk about the same players back-to-back weeks, because let's be honest, we could put Caleb Williams as the first string quarterback for every team of the week from now until the college football season ends, but that would be kind of boring. We know
but he was magical though, right? There's nothing boring about watching Caleb Williams this week.
No, nothing boring about it. But I mean, we can give him his accolades at all times.
Because we're going to be able to talk about him in glowing fashion every single week. He would be my highlight team of the week, but because just the type of plays that he made as a playmaker. We'll get to him later on this season. He's not going to be our highlight team of the week, but Paul, why don't you give us our first string team of the week?
Yeah, and the first, second, third string, it's guys that really stood out in a significant way. And if we have teammates, we decide that we're always going to group them together, because we're just kind of naturally going to talk about that game and that performance. So like if you see a quarterback from Florida and a wide receiver and they're both on our teams of the week, we're going to group them together, just because as we talk about that game and the performance, it's just easier to kind of talk about them in unison. And you're going to kind of see that today. So let's start it out with our first S2S team of the week. This is our first string, our first team, and it's going to be started out by Shedeur Sanders out of Colorado. He's going to be our quarterback. Huge win by Colorado, 45-42 win over TCU. He was 38 of 47 for 510 yards and 4 touchdowns. Tremendous performance. Our running back on the first team of the week is Braylon Allen out of Wisconsin. They won over Buffalo this week. His stat line was 17, 141, and 2. Really intriguing. He also caught 7 passes for 25 yards. Wide receiver, first team of the week, is Travis Hunter out of Colorado, also in that big win over TCU. He had 11 catches for 119 yards, but he also played cornerback the entire game. We will get more into that. And our first string tight end of the week is Ben Sinnott out of Kansas State. They had a 45-0 easy win, but what stood out is 5 catches for 100 yards. Jeff, let's start with the first team of the week. Anybody you want to bring up there? Sanders, Allen, Hunter, Sinnott, maybe get us started on something that stood out about one of those prospects.
Well, I got a chance to watch through the Wisconsin game and, most of Braylon Allen's snaps, but, we can't bury the headline of Primetime's debut. And I know you got every snap there. So let's start with Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. And why don't you give us a breakdown of their level of play on the field, because we know the stats are amazing.
Yeah, I mean, Shedeur Sanders was my number 12 quarterback in my summer ranking show when Jeff and I talked about the quarterbacks. And I was already going out on a limb, putting him at number 12, playing last year, small school program, but I loved the traits and I thought they could translate. I wasn't expecting this type of translation in week 1 against TCU. I know TCU lost a lot of people, and I know they were a weak national title runner-up last year. but they still were the national title runner-up last year, and Colorado won one game. We saw Sanders have complete control at the quarterback position, and that was something that I wasn't sure. I didn't know if he was just traitsy, but we saw a guy who was calm, cool, collected. And those sound like just like trigger words, but it was really what we saw. His first time in a big moment against a better level of competition, the moment was not too big for him. He showed off his arm talent. He had some amazing throws where he showed off his velocity and his strength. He had some great throws where he showed the touch and the ability to change the velocity to get it to his receivers. We saw him move around the pocket. He didn't really have to do too much in terms of his legs, in terms of running, but we saw the athleticism that is there to move around the pocket, buy time, throw on the run. It was a tremendous performance. We're going to be talking about this guy. Now, listen, he's only a redshirt sophomore, so he could have a great year and still decide to stay there with his dad. Like, this will be a story that we'll see the whole year. I wouldn't even be surprised, but this is a guy that's now on the draft radar. His stock is pointing right up right now. It's just one game, and I'm not going to go out here like we did after 1 week last year and bring up Anthony Richardson, but we did talk about Anthony Richardson last year after that first game of how intriguing he was. Shedeur Sanders, very intriguing. His running mate there at wide receiver, I mean, I don't think people truly understand. Travis Hunter played, I think it was 119 snaps. That is unheard of to play both ways. This isn't like, oh, Charles Woodson played a little wide receiver at Michigan. Deion played a little wide receiver. This guy basically was on the field, both sides, every play of the game at the wide receiver and the cornerback position. You know, and they asked Joe Klatt on the broadcast, which position is he better at? And Joe Klatt was brutally honest to Gus Johnson and said, I don't know. That's how special of a prospect he is at both the wide receiver and the cornerback position. It was a remarkable performance for both of them. The upset by Colorado, you know, those two guys immediately, the significance of that in their first big moment against a big-time opponent was just remarkable, Jeff. Any other thoughts on just Sanders and Hunter in general, or I know you said you had eyes on that Wisconsin Braylon Allen performance. Maybe take it to there if there's nothing else you want to piggyback on Sanders and Hunter.
Well, one final thought on Sanders and Hunter was the pace which Deion had them playing. I think is, first of all, an absolute shocker to TCU. They just were not ready for that level of aggression. And I think that made the game a little bit easier, and that is not easy to, play 120 snaps and to sprint to the line every time. I guess what I'm saying is, they caught TCU off their heels. It was a really good environment, prime time. Like he set that team up for that upset, for that success. So like he deserves so much credit. Sanders and Hunter, they executed that game plan really well. I guess the question is, hurry up doesn't always work all the time, right? And so watching the evolution of him play that quarterback on the big stage will be something that I follow as this season goes on. I mentioned it, Braylon Allen, our first string running back of the week. All right. Starting off the lay of the land, the Wisconsin O-line dominated. It was a poor tackling effort by Buffalo. His running mate, Ches Malusi, had 157 yards and 2 touchdowns too, right? But Braylon Allen, he had several runs of 8 to 10 yards before even being touched. What did we see on tape, though? He had his trademark power, finishing ability, and we saw a second gear. He had acceleration well at speed in the second level. That's a little bit of extra burst to break angles. This is something that helps a prospect be special at the NFL level. We also saw him catch the ball a lot better. 7 catches is almost half of what he had the entire last season. And he's using his hands to go attack the ball. It's still a developing skill. It doesn't look like he's the most natural and comfortable at it. But if that develops over this year, he can bring multiple dimensions to an NFL field. Just a couple other little notes that I saw, he had, really good blitz pickup and his, ability to ID and sort of chop and redirect rushers. It was a phenomenal game. I think there were a lot of other names that people were getting excited about this offseason, and Braylon Allen was kind of, just taking a back seat to the new hype. And I think what he's really shown is that he has the tools, and we mentioned it on our preseason show. He has the tools, to be the first running back taken, especially if this is the momentum that he carries through the rest of the season.
Yeah, I thought it was nice. Again, the yardage for the receptions was minimal, but just the fact that they even felt comfortable like dumping it off to him for 7 catches, I think stands out as making him a little bit more functional in the pass game, just overall increasing his value. And then to round out the first string, Ben Sinnott, I think what stood out there is the fact that he's a name that I don't think is on the national attention enough. He's not on a lot of Devy lists. And he's a guy who I think already NFL scouts and teams are looking at as a day 2 tight end prospect. So to come out of the gate, even against an inferior opponent, and go 5 for 100, I think you're going to see a lot of performances by him where he's maybe the leading receiver on his team and one of the focal points. And we don't usually see too many tight ends be the focal point of a college passing offense. I think Sinnott's going to be one of the focal points of that Kansas State offense, and we're going to see him regularly put up 4 catches, 5 catches, 6 catches. And all of a sudden, if he stays healthy, you're talking about a guy who's going to put up a really strong statistical tight end college season that we don't usually see. So I think that's what's intriguing about that. Let's take this to the S2S second string team of the week for week 1. We start at the quarterback position. It was Michael Penix Jr. out of Washington. They had a big win, 56-19 over Boise State. He threw for 450 yards and 5 touchdowns. Our second string running back of the week is Jo'Cavius Marks out of Mississippi State. They had an easy win, 48-7 over Southeastern Louisiana. But what impressed me, 19 carries for 127 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then 4 for 59. This was the guy I talked about on the preview shows who was not a guy who I thought was going to be a heavy runner. So that kind of running production really stood out. At the wide receiver position, second string team of the week was Jalen McMillan out of Washington. Talked about the big win over Boise. He had 8 catches for 95 yards and 2 touchdowns, and a rush for 19 yards and a touchdown. And then at tight end, the second string of the week was Cade Stover out of Ohio State. They won 23-3 over Indiana, but he had 5 catches for 98 yards. Really impressive performance by him. Jeff, I know you had eyes on that Washington game. I thought it was I had some eyes on it. I have some thoughts on Penix Jr. and Jalen McMillan, but let me kind of let you start there with what you maybe want to share, some thoughts on Penix.
Yeah, so Michael Penix Jr., first of all, it was a highlight game. Almost all his plays were almost all highlights, but everything came from a clean pocket in ideal conditions. There was one play where he did have a free rusher to his face and delivered an accurate pass, with that pressure. But in general, I'm nitpicking, but not elite ball placement. It was good, accurate passes, a good recognition of leverage. He had a couple back shoulder throws to Romo Dunes. He's putting the ball away from the defenders so that the wide receiver can use his body and protect the catch. But my nitpicking is, a couple of the balls weren't thrown ahead of his receiver, right? On the run, right? Limiting a little bit of the yak ability that could be there if he led his receivers a little bit better. And he had a couple throws just get away from him that game. 2-3 throws just kind of did not know where they were going. I think in general, this was a phenomenal game. I think I'm nitpicking when I bring up a couple of these little minor pieces. But when we talked about him on the preview show, one of the first pieces of information that, I really wanted to see was how does he's not going to be a mobile dual threat quarterback. We know his legs are not his primary weapon. And in order to, to win those plays out of structure on the NFL level, he's going to have to be able to navigate the pocket with a lot of traffic. And it's just not reps that we got to see in this game. Maybe just a couple quick notes on McMillan here. I got the broadcast view, so I'm not watching all of his reps on all 22. I'm not exactly seeing, every way he wins, but on some of those highlights, he had really good movement skills at speed. He was great at attacking the ball, really good hand positions. He had a phenomenal game. He showed yak ability. He showed the ability to get open. One final note that I had on Michael Penix Jr. from like a plus perspective is, there was one play he had just really good situational awareness. Snap came through. It was kind of a fumbled snap. He dropped the ball. he didn't panic, right? He realized that in the time it took to recover the ball and get back into the play, he no longer had his first read. He jumped straight into his second read, right? He has an understanding of the timing of the play and where he needs to be at that time, despite having something go wrong at the start of it. I thought that was just a nice play to really highlight as well. That one was a touchdown to McMillan, I think.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback, Michael Penix Jr.'s performance this week, I talked about it a little bit. I was on Twitter this weekend. If NFL teams are okay with the medicals, which we won't know for a long time, right? Once they really, get in there and the combine medical checks and stuff. But if they're okay with the medicals and they're okay with their quarterback mostly playing from the pocket, NFL teams are going to be really intrigued with Michael Penix Jr. because I think you watch him play and he just looks like a seasoned veteran. Like he looks like a 5-year NFL veteran. The game looks very slow for him. He's going to be a guy that I think is going to absolutely crush interviews, the whiteboard process, like all that stuff. He just seems like he has total command of that offense. He like you said, you talked about a little nitpicking. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to find some things to talk about negatively, but it was a really strong performance. They were expected to win, but they were expected to win, by like maybe 2 touchdowns. And some people even thought it was going to be a closer game than that. And they just dominated that game. It looked like they could have put up 80 points if they really wanted to. Like it was an incredible performance. And Jalen McMillan, one more thing about Michael Penix Jr. I think he's in this really wide mix of quarterbacks that I think are going to vie for that QB3 position. And I honestly think it's like 7 or 8 names, which is kind of wild on just how strong of a quarterback class this could be. Now, not everyone might come out, right? We talked about Shadu Sanders before. He might not come out, and there could be some other guys that don't come out. We know Michael Penix Jr. is coming out, right? So so he's going to be one of those guys that's going to be in the mix for QB3. And I think that it was a great performance to start the year. Jalen McMillan's a guy who is like, I think it was my either 10th, 11th, or 12th off the top of my head. He was in my top 12 wide receivers heading into this year. The ball skills, the body control, he showed that a lot this past weekend. His running mate there, Rome Madoon's very talented as well. But Jalen McMillan, it kind of stole the show a little bit this week. We're finding the end zone for 3 times, 2 catches and 1 receiving. Those guys are going to put up monster stats. Penix Jr. is going to put up monster stats all year. It's going to be fun to watch that Washington offense because I think they're going to be exciting all year, and they're going to be putting up arcade style, passing numbers and receiving production for sure. If we take this, just a quick thought, I kind of mentioned it before, the Jo'quavious Marks performance, what really stood out for me was 23 touches. When I envisioned this, and I even thought it was going to kind of play itself out in terms of his college season, is I thought he was going to be a guy that, 8, 9, 10 rushes, 3 to 5 catches a week. They fed him 19 times this week, and then he still had the 4 receptions. If he kind of morphs himself in to this more complete player where he starts showing the natural run instincts and the vision and the patience that obviously we know comes with being a successful runner at the next level, we know he's an elite pass catcher. He's going to be the best pass catching running back in this class, bar none. I mean, he has like a 70 catch season under his belt. But if he starts showing the improvement in terms of the run game and they start trusting him and we start getting to see 16, 17, 18, 19 carries a week, we're talking about a guy who's going to become one of the more complete running backs in this draft class, which is only going to increase his stock and make him a really intriguing prospect. And then Cade Stover at Ohio State, the tight end. Listen, in vogue is the pass catching tight end. Cade Stover represents the dual tight end. All we talk about is the wide receivers at Ohio State who had a very quiet week 1. Cade Stover, 5 catches, 98 yards. He's the best blocking tight end, in college in terms of the highly regarded tight end prospects. So a performance like that right out of the gate, I think he's going to have a really strong year. And if teams focus all their attention on the wide receivers, you're going to see Cade Stover have some of these games where he puts together a really intriguing statistical performance on top of being one of the best blocking tight ends in the country, on top of being able to play in line, which we know so many of these college tight ends aren't really going to be asked to do that at the next level. Jeff, anything you want to jump in there, or should I just take it to the third and final team of the week?
I just had one final note that I skipped over on my Michael Penix sort of write-up, and it was just that he picked apart zone coverage. Like you said, the maturity at the quarterback level. I mean, we see it with his experience, but it's showing on the field too.
Cool. Yeah, and I right there with you. You just kind of see it. It's slowed down for him, and it's an impressive performance by him. So let's take this to the final. And the first thing we're doing here, guys, is the draft eligible guys. We're going to get to the Devy team of the week in a second. But third string S2S team of the week for week one consists of a couple of guys who played last night. Jordan Travis out of Florida State. Big win by Florida State, 45-24 over LSU. He threw for 342 yards and 4 touchdowns, chipped in with another 38 yards rushing for a touchdown as well. The running back on the third string team of the week is Autry Esteem out of Notre Dame. They played in week 0 and week 1. Both weeks, almost 100 yards week 1 and a touchdown. This past week, 116 yards and a touchdown. Talk a little bit more about him in a minute. Keon Coleman is the third string wide receiver team of the week. That helping in that big win over LSU. He had 9 catches, 122 yards, and 3 touchdowns in his debut performance for Florida State after transferring from Michigan State. And then the third tight end of the week, also from Florida State, Jaheim Bell, 45-24, helping in that LSU victory. He only had 2 catches for 49 yards, but one was a big for a touchdown. He also chipped in with a rushing touchdown as well. So let's group these Florida State guys together. I watched that game start to finish last night. You know, they started out red hot, and I'm sitting there feeling good about my prediction that the Florida State's going to have an explosive offense. And then the rest of the first half kind of was a little shaky, and my love for Jordan Travis, I started to be like, uh-oh. But the second half, they showed why I think this team is going to be in the hunt for the playoff picture this year, in the hunt to be one of the most explosive offenses in college football. Jordan Travis, I think he's right there. I mentioned Michael Penix Jr. is in the mix to be QB3 in this draft class. I think Jordan Travis is one of the guys right there with him. After he kind of settled down, that first half, there was some really shaky decisions, a terrible interception, a couple other scratch-headed moves by him. But then you kind of saw him settle down, take advantage of that elite weapons that he has. You saw him and his mobility and his athleticism to make things happen. Dangerous in the RPO game. I love the accuracy, the ball placement. He's got the arm talent to push it vertically down the field as well. But he's just another guy. I almost like him better when he's out of structure than when he's in structure. You know, I think he's a weapon when he starts moving around. So I thought it was a really strong performance. Like all these other guys we're talking about, they didn't go up against really top-level teams. Even you know, what Shadu Sanders did was amazing, but TCU, I think, is going to take a step back this year. LSU is 5th in the nation. You know, people have high expectations, and they didn't just beat him. They destroyed him in that second half. And Jordan Travis at the helm, really impressive. Keon Coleman, he was number 4 in my wide receiver rankings heading into the season. I don't see a scenario unless things go really sideways. I think you could put round 1 in Sharpie when it comes to Keon Coleman. And that's what I tweeted out yesterday. The size, the athleticism, the speed with those type of ball skills, body control, like his 3 touchdowns were all of a different variety. The first one showed his ability to, you know, make a big play after the catch. The second one showed his freakish ball skills and body control and the ability to adjust. And then the third one, a little bit of a shorter route, again, showed that body control and ball skills, the complete package. And I think we saw that last night that, like, he's a guy that, listen, I love Malik Neighbors. I love, Egbuka at Ohio State, paired up with Marvin Harrison Jr. But Keon Coleman's size, athleticism, and speed with his ball skills, I think could be in the mix to push those other guys to even be wide receiver too. And maybe it's just week 1, but I already love the guy. And you go out and do this against LSU in your debut performance. And to me, it spoke volumes on how much of a dangerous weapon this guy's going to be. Team's also got to worry about his teammate, Johnny Wilson. He had a really strong game. That's to clean up some drop issues, though. But I think Keon Coleman is the player with the much higher ceiling of that duo, and we saw it right out of the gate. And then Jaheim Bell, he's going to be the jack of all trades. That they transferred from South Carolina. He's going to be a guy, I kind of compared him to Chigakonkwo. I think you can run him. You can move him out in motion. He can be an H-back. You can do a lot of different things as a versatile chess piece. That's going to intrigue NFL teams as well. And it makes Florida State so dangerous. And we didn't even see our boy Trey Benson really get into the mix and do much last night. When he gets going with the 2 receivers and the versatile piece in Jaheim Bell, I think you're going to see Florida State be a real pose a lot of difficulties for opposing defenses to try to contain them because they have so many ways you can beat them. Jeff, any thoughts on the Florida State trio before I'll talk about Audric Esteem a little bit in a second?
Yeah, I mean, through the first half, you actually saw LSU is no pushover, right? They were a good defense. They were in the backfield. They were covering the receivers really well. So to be able to go ahead and play the second half that way, it was a really great performance. Again, we're talking the level of competition here is top of the class in college football. And this is the type of playing we see Travis, we see Keon Coleman making. All right, Jordan Travis, I think just I want to put so much on his shoulders for the success here, because as much as I love, the Keon Coleman's performance, like that does not happen if you don't have the ball placement and accuracy that Jordan Travis had down the field. You don't have that type of performance if you don't have Jordan Travis, buying time, getting to the right platform, making sure that he's set and evading pressure. Look, the the interception was really bad. That's but that's the one blemish on his game in my mind. I mean, the way that he used his legs, it was very smart. You saw kind of a counterpunch to that in Jaden Daniels, on the other side of the field, where he relied on that a lot more. Jordan Travis, he has that weapon, but it was a club in his back, but he brought it out when necessary to like 3rd and 8 to scramble for a first down, right? Keep the defense honest, punish them, when they decide to take away Trey Benson and the receivers, and then go ahead and just run right through the middle of the defense. That was a phenomenal performance from Jordan Travis. And because I'm giving a lot of credit to Jordan Travis, I'm going to take a little bit off of Keon Coleman. I know you love him. I would put one nitpick on the, completely full, well-rounded prospect. And I think that's the route running side of it. It's not something that, the yak house call on the touchdown, it was a slant route. It was good, but it wasn't anything that was like, it was a very execute on the scheme level. This wasn't something that, was, making we weren't seeing Michael Thomas, Justin Jefferson style, wins on that play, right? The plays down the field, amazing body control, amazing, skills at the catch point, amazing athleticism, right? But he didn't, on the route running, create extra space to make it easier on Jordan Travis. Jordan Travis just put that ball exactly where it needed to go, and Coleman went up and won it. I mean, that's great. And I just think if we're going to talk about, someone on elite level, those are going to be the things that I want to see on a well-rounded first round prospect. Quentin Johnston made it into the first round last year without all of those, refined skills. So, this isn't a knock on, his potential draft capital, but just, where I think he can grow as a player.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, because even like when we talked about him in the summer, his route running, understanding the route concepts, that was not in the strength category, right? So that's where that, as he continues to develop this year, that's the area. I don't think no one should ever watch Keon Coleman and be like, oh, like he's going to be athletic. He's got ball skills for days. He's got body control, all that stuff. If the route running comes, that's where, like, if the route running comes together, now we're talking, okay, maybe he could push to be wide receiver 2 in this class. Maybe he could push Malik Neighbors. Maybe he could push Agbupa. Like that's the scenario where, like you said, I think Quentin Johnston is a really intriguing name to bring up, because I wasn't a huge Quentin Johnston guy. I liked him, didn't love him. I like Keon Coleman more than I feel like I ever liked Quentin Johnston, because I just didn't feel like at times Quentin Johnston played up to that size and athleticism, and I think Coleman does. But in terms of not being the complete player, I think you're right. I think that's where Coleman is right now. So it'll be interesting to kind of see, how that further develops. And then the last note about the last player in the third team of the week, Audric Estim. I wanted to bring him up at Notre Dame because he wasn't in our breakdown when we did the scouting reports and our early running back rankings. He was on my watch list. 5'11", 227. We're talking about a strong, physical interior runner. So Estim's a guy in that offense. I think Notre Dame's offense this year, is going to be one that they're going to be able to run it. They're going to be able to pass it. You're going to see a lot of strong performances this year out of that Notre Dame offense. And if you're, a tough interior physical runner, that's kind of Esteem's going to be that kind of guy. So he's a new name that I kind of wanted to bring to the forefront, because I do think overall it was a little bit of a down week at the running back position, right? We didn't really see any big time performances from the names of, the headliners, right? Besides Braylon Allen, the headliner running backs in this draft class didn't have, a staggering performances in week one of the college football season. A couple of names.
Before we go to the Devy, just like two final thoughts, right? So Keon Coleman, I put Quentin Johnston out there because that's fresh in people's minds right now. That's not who I saw when he was playing on the field. You evoked Brandon Marshall when you were watching that, the game last night. So, that's where, if his route running gets to an NFL level, Brandon Marshall, Mike Evans, those are the kinds of Demaryius Thomas is another one that kind of came to mind. Those are the type of players that, I think, he will evoke shades of when we see him on the NFL field, because I think that's bound to happen. And a final note, because you did bring him up just briefly, Trey Benson, he didn't get going. I mean, I think that I credit the LSU defense on that. There were just so many runs where he was just hit 3-5 yards behind the line of scrimmage. But you still saw some of that trademark, like decision-making, vision, toughness, tackle breaking, yards after contact, tough running from him in that game. The stat line doesn't look stellar, but you still saw the type of player that we got excited about show through against a really tough defense.
Yeah, and I'll say one guy in terms of Keon Coleman, I think the down the field, like the ball skills, body control, for me, reminded me a lot of why I love T. Higgins so much coming out. Like, I think he's more athletic than T. Higgins, and we'll see how this year progresses. But I think the ball skills, the ability to adjust, had a lot of T. Higgins vibes for me. Before we go to the S2S Devy Team of the week for week one, a couple names, no discussion really this week that were honorable mention that didn't make it that we felt the need to at least bring up. Drake May at a UNC, playing without his new number one wide receiver this past week. UNC had a really strong victory against South Carolina. Drake May had some moments, some poor decisions, but all in all, it was a really impressive performance by him. At the wide receiver position, we mentioned his name before, Rome Odunes, really strong performance. It was just McMillan kind of found the end zone, so he was on our team of the week. But Rome Odunes, a guy who we're going to be talking about a lot all year. And then I wanted to bring him up. J. Michael Sturdivant at UCLA. He's coming, folks. As Dion says, we're coming. J. Michael Sturdivant's coming. First performance at UCLA. I think it was like 5 for 136. Really impressive. You're going to keep hearing more and more about his name, and he's going to continue to intrigue people. And then at the tight end position, Luke Lachey out of Iowa, the next in probably the lineage of the tight end position. He had a strong performance this week as well. If I take this to the Devy S2S Team of the Week for week one, at the quarterback position, it was Drew Allar out of Penn State. Big win for Penn State over West Virginia, 38-15, 21 of 29, 323 yards and 3 touchdowns. At the running back position, back to that Colorado game, Dylan Edwards had a big role in that upset win by Colorado. 6 carries for 24 yards only, but 5 catches for 135 yards and 3 touchdowns, including the game winner. Zachariah Branch out of USC helped have big plays in both the wins over Nevada and San Jose State. 4 catches, 58 yards and a touchdown in week 1. 1 catch, 22 yards and a touchdown in week. Well, the first one was week 0, then week 1, and then Deuce Robinson out of USC didn't do anything in week 1, but in week 0, 3 catches, 44 yards. What stands out about him? He was a top tight end recruit on Rivals, 6'6", 230-pound move tight end type, already getting in the mix there. Jeff, any thoughts on any of the Devy guys? Usually the Devy guys we won't go into as much depth on, but is there anything about these guys that you want to talk about?
Well, look, I think seeing, really strong play from Drew Allar is encouraging, because, he's got the hype and we really need to just, see a really strong foundation to support it. Especially because, I think he's the headliner of that next class. Which, we're really excited about all the quarterbacks this year. And I think it's a little bit thinner when it comes to his class, and so he could be the top guy, the headliner, and to be able to come out strong like that, is encouraging. Honestly, the one name that I really want to highlight, I mean, I talked, we talked at the beginning of the show that Caleb Williams is, an insane magician, but he's got a stage partner in Zachariah Branch who has special traits. The way, I think he even had a kick return, right? I don't know that got on the stats that you listed out, but his move, we're not seeing gaudy stats like from our team of the week at the start, but those are coming. And if they don't come this year, he's going to explode, and he's going to be, I think, the top Devy receiver by next year.
Yeah, I mean, the explosiveness. I feel like we haven't seen an explosive playmaker at USC. I mean, they've had good playmakers for sure, very good. We haven't seen an explosive player like this at USC since Reggie Bush. And like that, just the movement skills, what you're talking about, the instant acceleration, just how much of a dangerous weapon he is in the open field. So Zachariah Branch is a guy, if he's available, or if you can get him on your teams now in Devy, now's the time to do it, because I think you're just going to continue to see his stock soar and soar. The guy I kind of wanted to talk about was Drew Allar out of Penn State. I think you're talking about, this year it's Caleb Williams and Drake May. Like, those are the guys. I think you're talking about next year at this time, we're going to be talking about Drew Allar as the clear potential quarterback one of the 2025 NFL draft. In Devy, if you want to put him third after the top two guys this year, I think that is 100% valid. I think that's the type of prospect we're talking about here. So really impressive performance by him, 325 yards, 3 touchdowns. Like I said, I thought that Penn State game might've been a little closer this past weekend. They handled West Virginia very easily. And I think you're going to see Allar have some monster performances this week and just kind of elevate his stock even more, maybe in the national eyes. I know the Devy community, knows about him and is high on him, but I don't think people, last year at this time, people knew Caleb Williams. People knew Drake May, like, even if they weren't into Devy. I think Drew Allar's name is going to start garnering similar attention to how the same way we were talking about Caleb Williams and Drake May. I don't think he's at that level of player just yet, but I think he's going to be the guy that we're looking at for 2025 as one of the top quarterback prospects. And he came out of the gate with an impressive performance. And then Dylan Edwards out of Colorado, just the versatility and being that kind of weapon out of the backfield. That was week 1 here for Colorado. I think we're going to see a lot more from Dylan Edwards this year. Obviously very undersized, 5'9", 170, but the performance he put on this week and his playmaking ability and his ability, to be a weapon catching the ball out of the backfield. I think we're going to see that a lot this year.
Yeah, especially if that's the type of offense they're going to run, and they're going to go at that pace, and they're going to go at that, that play style. Like, there's going to be opportunities for him to break those big plays again. And then I think just, one honorable mention. So, Matt wanted to join us. He's coming back. I can't wait to get him on here. But he's got a crush. He's there for those, that recruiting class, that entering Devy class, and the quarterback class coming in this year. We have a ton of really big names, and one that sometimes lost in the shuffle is Dante Moore, quarterback at UCLA, who worked his way into the field. Just watch that, because, he could be taking over and taking a spotlight by the end of this season.
Yeah, he's a guy that, very exciting. I think he's going to be one of those guys that the Devy community just is raving about and has, very much at the top of their QB ranks for sure. And I think he'll just continue to slowly move up those rankings as we see him play. Final thoughts, Jeff. NFL season kicking off in about 4 days. It's exciting. Well, Thursday night, even sooner. We haven't talked about the rookies in quite some time. I'm intrigued to kind of see where this goes. I mean, we got Fareed, Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud all starting. We'll see what type of offense that the Colts are running there with Anthony Richardson. We'll see, Young and Stroud and how they look to get going. I think the preseason, we'd be foolish if we didn't say stock up at the quarterback position on Aiden O'Connell. He flat out was unbelievable for the Raiders. I know it's preseason, but he's a guy in deep dynasty leagues. I'd get my hands on Aiden O'Connell if it's a super flex, and you can get your hands on him for cheap. They might have found a little bit of a diamond in the rough there. There were always people higher on Aiden O'Connell than me, but what I saw in the preseason, he might be that guy. If Josh McDaniels can save his job there, I think Aiden O'Connell might be a guy who can really run his offense, to the T. So I'd keep a close eye on Aiden O'Connell. I think his stock's up at the running back position. Listen, Devin A-Chain might get asked to carry a heavier workload and get more touches off the gate with Jeff Wilson hurt. So that excites me as someone who's been an A-Chain fan. We'll kind of see how that Charbonnet, Kenneth Walker situation starts out the season. Kendre Miller dealing with another injury, which is kind of unfortunate because with that Kamara 3-game suspension, he might have had an opportunity to kind of really push his way into some playing time if he looked good those first 3 weeks. So we'll see if he gets out there. It looks like Roshan Johnson has solidified the RB2 job in Chicago. Ahead of Donta Foreman. So that's something to keep an eye on. Tyjae Spears looked great during the preseason. Deuce Vaughn, our boy, looked great in the preseason. We'll see if he comes out of the gate with some touches in that Dallas offense. Tank Bigsby looks like he's going to be heavily involved with the first team right out of the gate with that Jacksonville offense. And then Evan Hull, we'll see about that Indianapolis situation, but he's a deep guy that, if Zach Moss is the only guy and Deion Jackson, if they don't sign a veteran, Evan Hull might get a chance sooner rather than later. Jeff, anything with the quarterbacks or running backs there, names I mentioned or somebody else before I give you a name or two at the tight end position and the wide receiver position?
Yeah. So first, Aiden O'Connell definitely, play that changed my mind, right? That I think that first and foremost is the most impressive thing, to change my mind by seeing what you take to the NFL field. We've seen great preseason performances before, but like that is the first step. And I think just absolute credit to him. I think he's probably the star of the preseason in my mind, especially because he's doing it at the quarterback position. Look, the hype train has run away on Jahmyr Gibbs farther than even I was going into the season. Yeah, I was really high on him. I wasn't expecting the Lions to take him in the first round. I wasn't expecting the fantasy community to, crown him as Austin Eckler, but that's kind of what the expectations are around Jahmyr Gibbs right now. And it could be really exciting. I think that's a little over our skis a little bit. That's not how I would set my expectations. But that is definitely in the realm of possibility here. Maybe I'm going to take it to the wide receivers because
Sure.
There's one name that if I'm going to, plant a flag on a guy that is my buy now because this is the cheapest he will ever be, is Zay Flowers. He's by far and away my target at those wide receiver positions. Now I know Jackson Smith-Njigba deserves that level of respect as well, but I think everybody's giving him that level of respect. And I think Zay Flowers, I love Rashad Bateman. I love Mark Andrews. I love Lamar Jackson, but I think Zay Flowers is just going to run away with it, on that Baltimore offense with Lamar Jackson. And that's my name. That's my target. If you can get Zay Flowers, that's going to be my goal going into week 1.
Yeah, listen, Zay Flowers, me, I've been a big fan of him, since the whole process. I know that I don't like to even say the name, but he invokes what we saw Antonio Brown in terms of just his natural movement skills. Like, obviously, it doesn't mean he's going to have that level of success, but tremendous separation quickness and route running ability, by Zay Flowers. Other things at the wide receiver position that I think have changed a little bit in the preseason. Marvin Mims is going to get an opportunity in Denver to get a lot more immediate playing time with the Tim Patrick season-ending injury. Sounds like Jerry Jeudy might be on the shelf a lot longer than maybe we thought after his initial injury. So Marvin Mims is going to get a chance right out of the gate to play a factor. Puka Nacua is going to get a chance, I think, as a late round guy to get an opportunity in that Rams offense. Cooper Kupp, we'll see when he's full to go, but it sounds like Nacua is going to get a real opportunity to be in the top 3 wide receiver mix there for the Rams. Jalen Hyatt, Giants wide receiving crew, a little crowded but not overly abundant in terms of high-end talent. I think they're going to get him involved pretty regularly. I don't think he's going to be a full-time player or anything, but if he plays 25 snaps a game, I think they're going to find some ways to try to unleash that potential early in his season. I'm excited for week 1. I think he's going to get Diggs on a big play. Diggs is a great corner, but he's physicality is his game. I think he could be big. That's my long shot call. I think Jalen Hyatt's going to get, Trayvon Diggs for big play on Sunday Night Football next week. We'll see if we come back and talk about that next week. At the tight end position, it's kind of been, ho-hum. I think Dalton Kincaid's going to be mostly used as like their slot wide receiver and heavily involved. And Luke Musgrave pretty much exclusively running with the ones in Green Bay there. I think he's going to get every opportunity, to be heavily involved right out of the gate. Same thing with Sam Laporta, but we kind of stored that on writing on the wall right after they were drafted. So, Jeff, any final thoughts, or let's wrap this up?
I think we can wrap it up because I think football this next weekend is going to say way more than we can right now, and for more certainty.
Yeah, absolutely. So, guys, week 0, week 1 of the college football season in the books. Excited to see the NFL season kick off and where things go with week 2 of the college football season. This is going to kind of be the format of our shows, these teams of the week, and then we'll include the NFL rookie team of the week. So it'll be fun doing that as well. So on behalf of Jeff, on behalf of our sound tech engineer, David Nicano, and myself, thank you for joining us. And we look forward next time taking you from Saturday to Sunday.